Superman returns in July 2025 thanks to Superman Legacy. However, now that we're officially 1 year closer to the next big budget Superman movie, I thought it'd be a brilliant idea to finally play Superman Returns on the PS2 for the first time. And to the shock of absolutely nobody, this game is absolute chaos. This is one of the rare movie tie-in games where, although, yes, I think it's garbage and has aged terribly, it's far more interesting than its movie counterpart. No, I don't say this to insult Superman Returns, but a lot of the common complaints about Superman Returns is that it's extremely boring, doesn't have enough action scenes, or doesn't make use of the fact that it's a Superman film. When it comes to this game, however, I don't think people know just how much chaos happens in this PS2 game. For the people who say that there isn't enough action in Superman Returns, or that Superman Returns is boring in comparison to Man of Steel, Superman Returns on the PS2 feels like it's based on a completely different movie. This isn't a slow burn Superman game where you begin to slowly unlock abilities or feel like you're in a comic book brought to life like in Superman Shadow of Apocalypse, which is another Superman game I've covered on this channel. This isn't a game that follows the pacing of its movie counterpart where it takes a while to get going, but inevitably you find a bright moment or two that ultimately makes this game worth experiencing. No, and no, the Superman Returns game isn't any of those things. This game answers the #1 question everyone has about Superman Returns. What if the movie this game is based on actually had action-packed moments? Rather than giving you an answer you would expect, it just runs wild with its answer to that question. The game starts with a literal meteor shower that you have to stop, Metallo's robots are constantly destroying cars in Metropolis, buildings are catching on fire for whatever reason, and there are also flying demon creatures at one point in time. Oh, and how can I forget about the massive kaiju fight that happens in Superman Returns as well? This fight feels so out of place that it might have legitimately made more sense for Godzilla to randomly be in this PS2 game as a cameo than for it to have been a boss fight where Metallo turns into a literal kaiju. If you couldn't tell by now, this tie-in superhero game isn't one of those superhero games that tries to follow the structure of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movie or game. This is a game that throws everything you might expect from it out of the window and instead decides to be completely different from its source material. So rather than making Superman Returns this chill but fun Superman game where Superman grows to become stronger throughout several missions, this game said, nah, let's put Superman into a Michael Bay's Transformers movie and go all in on the action because that's what people want out of a Superman game. And for reference, that movie came out after this game was released, so it's not like we can say that Michael Bay's Transformers directly inspired the game. If this sounds like it's probably more fun than one would expect, you'd partially be correct. I admittedly had some fun in the mass amount of chaos in Superman Returns. However, that unfortunately didn't translate to me finding a ton of things to appreciate about this tie-in superhero game. Most of the things that I do appreciate about it are the smaller aspects of the game that don't necessarily stand out in the long run, along with one specific creative decision that I genuinely think is brilliant. To list those things, the music is stellar, the cutscene animations aren't terrible, the voice acting is better than expected even if there are barely any voice acted lines in the game, and the developer's ability to grab the likeness of the cast of Superman Returns goes a long way despite how the game has aged poorly in the graphics department. More importantly though, the creative decision that is arguably this game's saving grace is the concept of giving Metropolis a health bar, not Superman. After experiencing Superman Shadow of Apocalypse, I can easily say that giving Superman a health bar isn't the way to go for a Superman game. It just doesn't make for a fun experience, nor does it allow Superman to feel like Superman. In Superman Returns though, you do kind of feel like Superman. There were some moments here or there where I was concerned about the amount of damage being caused to Metropolis by the enemies I was fighting, especially in boss fights. I was constantly looking at the health bar of Metropolis hoping that I could finish a quick timed event as quickly as possible so Metropolis could gain some health back instead of it getting destroyed, thus causing me to redo whatever mission I was doing. It makes Superman Returns feel like the combination of a superhero game and a city management game, and it partially works for a movie tie-in game that came out in 2006. What makes this idea a bit of a letdown is that this game, unfortunately, doesn't make much use of Metropolis itself. Metropolis just feels like something you have to be concerned about now and then, because more often than not, you're not all that worried about the city's health bar. In my genuine opinion, Metropolis feels like nothing more than a sandbox city that you're thrown into with absolutely nothing to do. What makes this incredibly frustrating is that the gameplay loop of this game is incredibly monotonous. All you do is go from one QuickTime event to another to gain XP to fill up an overly long XP bar that holds you back from progressing in Superman Returns. There's no fun, no flair, and no personality to Metropolis besides some general NPC voice acting and the music that plays when you're actively flying to the next QuickTime event that you have to complete. Although they managed to capture the likeness of the actors from the movie, the realistic art style doesn't help this game because it's so incredibly bland visually. There's never a point in this game where you're mind blown by the art style or the city's design for Metropolis. I mean, how could anyone be blown away by the city design at the time of this game's release when even the Daily Planet is incredibly bland? And that's arguably the #1 thing you need to get right when adapting Metropolis in any form of Superman media. I mean, come on, look at this. This is the Daily Planet in the movie, and this is what we got in the game. How did they mess this up so badly? Now, it might seem like I'm trying to be overly dramatic when I say this next sentence, but I'm truly not. The more time I spent with this Superman Returns game, the more I actively began to feel a void within this game. While I've already commended this game for capturing the likeness of the actors and attempting to capture the likeness of Metropolis from the movie, I'm just gonna be honest. It feels like that was a terrible mistake that did more harm than good. What this game desperately needed, besides more of a comic book art style as seen in Superman Shadow of Apocalypse, was fun. It needed cheat codes that gave you a sense of enjoyment, not just making Metropolis have unlimited health or allowing you to freely roam the same boring, barren, and empty Metropolis you've roamed as Superman already with Bizarro. That isn't fun, that isn't charming, and that doesn't allow anyone to create any positive memories with what is an incredibly monotonous game. It needed cheat codes that allowed you to do something different with a character you love and allowed you to find yourself having unexpected fun. Does anybody else remember the secret bowling alley mode in the Spider-Man tie-in game? Does anybody else remember entering fun cheat codes in the main menu of Spider-Man that would do things like give the characters big heads, make the characters tiny, or even give you a secret feature like never-ending webbing? In hindsight, these are seemingly basic features that probably shouldn't have been as appreciated as they were or as fun as we remember, but that's exactly what this Superman Returns game needed. Fun modes or silly features that took you away from an otherwise boring and monotonous experience. This is a game starring Superman, who has 3 superpowers that are used throughout the game: Heat Vision, Super Breath, and Ice Breath. Do you mean to tell me that there wasn't a single fun thing that could have been implemented in the PS2 version of this game? We couldn't have done a timed obstacle course mode where Superman flies through the rings of Metropolis? We couldn't have done a mode where Superman uses his heat vision to destroy targets while he's stationary on the ground? We couldn't have done a racing mode where Superman uses his super speed to race different enemies one at a time? These are such basic ideas that sound silly and fun on paper, and that would have made the game so much easier to enjoy and would give people a reason to semi-fondly remember this Superman Returns game. It could have taken this game from, wow, this is a terribly boring tie-in superhero game with one single good idea, to, well, the story mode sucked, at least it had a good idea with Metropolis' health bar, and it had these super but ridiculously fun side modes that were enjoyable. You might be wondering why the story of this game sucks, and to be blatantly honest, the story sucks because it feels like a collection of random things that are happening for absolutely no reason at all. This is a bit of a common trend in these superhero licensed tie-in games. There's not a single moment or point in this game's story beyond the rehashed version of Superman Returns story that's told to you at the beginning of this game, where this game's story feels like it's cohesive. The story is just kind of there, and things are just kind of happening for no real reason at all. In Superman Shadow of Apocalypse, there's at least a story that's happening in the game. There are reasons, even if they're ridiculous reasons, as to why we're forced to face certain characters or complete certain levels. Even if there's a thin line of connection between the events or characters in the game, there's at least something there. For those who didn't watch that video, a big thing I kept saying about Shadow of Apocalypse was that it felt like an episode of a Superman cartoon. It has that fun, believable, and incredibly nostalgic Saturday morning cartoons type of vibe. I can't say that about Superman Returns at all. Despite all of the chaos that happens in this game, there's never a point where you feel like the chaos has a purpose. Metallo shows up, but you're never told why. Bizarro shows up, but you're never told why. A bunch of flying demons show up. You're never told why. I was honestly hoping for these events to build towards something worth caring about, or to have some level of setup that makes all of these things worth experiencing, but ultimately, that never happened. We're just given random cutscenes periodically that are like 30 seconds long, and then the game throws you right back into the boring, random, and repetitive gameplay that isn't enjoyable at all. It's unfortunate considering I do like the animation style of the cutscenes and the very brief voice acting in these cutscenes. As I said earlier, those things are 2 out of the 4 bright spots in this game. With this movie tie-in game being so drastically different from its movie counterpart, I do think this game could have had a fun story worth caring about. The different story and tone of this game is what makes this game semi-worth experiencing if you're really curious as to whether or not this game is as bad as everyone says. However, what stops this game's different but very unremarkable story from becoming anything worth caring about is, again, the gameplay. The game forces the player to spend so much time just roaming Metropolis and repeating the same cycle of gameplay over and over again, stops you from ever feeling like any of the time you spent with the game was worth it. Going through such long periods of roaming in Metropolis without any interesting side missions that aren't one of the same 3 side missions you're constantly doing makes you forget that the game even has a purpose or end goal. You're never rewarded for constantly saving the people of Metropolis. You're never able to go off on a random quest to find the side mission that's across the city and that is something as simple as, go save this cat in a tree, please. You're never given anything fun to do in between the repetitive gameplay loop. While this might sound dramatic, these long periods of monotonous gameplay legitimately made me realize that I forgot that the game even had a story. I know that might sound like I'm lying, but when you spend well over an hour doing the same thing over and over again, because you have to fill in a ridiculously long XP bar to unlock the next major chapter, you tend to forget that there's an actual attempted story in this game. It wasn't until I spent well over 2 hours doing the same thing over and over again that I randomly got a cutscene and got hit with the realization, oh right, there's a story in here. Sadly, Superman Returns feels like a game with a ton of missed potential. This is one of the rare movie tie-in superhero games where it gets some of the key things right, like the controls for when you fly around Metropolis, like Superman's abilities, heat vision, ice breath, super breath that are used throughout the game, and like capturing the likeness of actors from a movie. The problem though is that this game is just not fun to play whatsoever. I know I've said it multiple times, but this game is just boring, repetitive, and lacks any charm whatsoever. What's sad is that it feels like this game succeeded at its #1 goal, making it easy to control Superman and making it easy to use Superman's abilities. However, what stopped this game from overcoming the hurdle of being a good Superman game is that focusing on that goal unintentionally made them leave any sense of fun out of the door. There's no enjoyment that you get from the gameplay loop. There are no cutscenes or moments throughout the game that make you chuckle. Superman doesn't have any one-liners that at least make you smile, and there's nothing that gives you that nostalgic feeling that you might still feel if you played Spider-Man on the GameCube today. Superman Returns could have genuinely been the answer to the ever-growing debate regarding whether or not a good Superman game could exist after Superman 64 and Superman Shadow of Apocalypse. But instead, this game ended up being an unremarkable entry to a line of games within a franchise that absolutely deserved better.